the genuine hypocrisy of everything. I'll hide this while I explain this. Uh, Everybody on poll seems to be very pro-Putin. For Ukraine is a very Jewish country, sometimes referred to as Ukraine. In fact, when I lived there, I lived a couple blocks away from a synagogue. I remember very vividly seeing a little kid who had the Orthodox Jew curls and the little hat on, and I swear to God, he had a shirt on that was a Pikachu that had Orthodox Jew curls, and it said Pikachu under it. So this little kid was walking around in his Pikachu t-shirt, and it was very funny to me. And the street that the synagogue was on was literally called Jew Street in Ukrainian. It was in the Ukrainian language, the name of the street was Jew Street, and that's where the synagogue was. And that is because Ukraine does have a large Jewish population, and that is because there used to be a Turkic tribe called the Khazars, or whatever. If you wonder where the term Khazar comes from, it's because there was a Turkic tribe from the Caucasus spread up north all the way to Odessa, and they were Jewish, and they have integrated into the area of both Ukraine and South Russia. So you look at Zelensky, he's Jewish. A lot of people in Ukraine are Jewish, but then you look at Russia, and the wealth distribution is such that 1% of Russia's population owns 76% of its wealth, and only 15% of the people that hold that 1% are ethnic Russians. The rest are Jewish. So the oligarchs who actually run Russia are Jewish. So if you're looking at this purely from, I hate the side that has the most Jews on it, then you're going to have a hard time choosing between Ukraine and Russia, because they're both very Jewish. And then there are other people who say that this is, because they're both Jewish, this is a psyop, but apparently they've wanted a hot war for years, and then when it happens, it's a bad thing, it's a psyop, exactly like how they said that they called Muslims invaders for a very long time, and then BT happens, and BT is a CIA psyop, so it's like, okay, do you want war or do you not want war? Are these people invaders that people should do something about, or are people doing something about it CIA psyops? It's just a weird bipolarism about saying one thing and then believing the other when it actually happens. And then there are people who are pro 2A, pro Second Amendment, pro civilian weaponry, who see that Zelensky handing out firearms to the civilian population is a bad thing, and he's trying to make civilian casualties go up, but then those same people support Second Amendment rights. But then the people who are against Second Amendment rights are praising Zelensky for handing out AK-47s to everyone who wants one. And so it's such as poll tards. It's like everyone is caught up in this dilemma of total hypocrisy that frustrates me endlessly. And I mentioned in my community post, the one thing that disgusts me the most is just the people who are like, oh, I can't wait for all the sexy Ukrainian refugees to come to my country so I can take advantage of their economic situation and sexually exploit them. Like, if you know those people, stay away from them, because they're fucking perverts, and they would definitely rape children on Epstein Island if given the chance. Do not let those people into your community. They're sickos. So here is an example of something that has been driving me crazy, and I want to share my frustrations. Google Europe says, due to the ongoing war in Ukraine, we're blocking YouTube channels connected to Russia Today and Sputnik across Europe, effective immediately. It'll take time for our systems to fully ramp up. Our teams continue to monitor the situation around the clock to take swift action. So it's like, okay, so the liberal West is now banning Russia Today and Sputnik because I guess they're Russian, and therefore it's bad, right? But I thought censorship was bad. But then we see that Discord, which was recently bought by Microsoft, has just amended its terms of service to say that you are prohibited from sharing false or misleading information known as misinformation. So censorship is okay as long as it's misinformation, right? But then we see over here, what kind of misinformation are they banning? Well, they're banning Putin saying that they're fighting a denazification war against Ukraine.
Ваши отцы, деды и прадеды не для того сражались с нацистами, защищая нашу общую родину, чтобы сегодняшние неонацисты захватили власть на Украине. Вы давали присягу на верность украинскому народу, а не антинародной хунте, которая грабит Украину и издевается над этим самым народом.
And to repeat that into English, he says, "Dear comrades, speaking to Ukrainian soldiers, your fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers did not fight defending our motherland," referring to the USSR, "for today's neo-Nazis," referring to the Azov Battalion, "to seize power in Ukraine. You took an oath of allegiance to the Ukrainian people, and not to the anti-people junta that robs and harasses its own people," referring to the Zelensky government. But then it's like, okay, well, I thought Putin was Hitler. Here's a picture of Putin dressed up as Hitler. That must mean that he's lying. Well, then we see that Facebook has recently publicly stated that you are allowed to praise the neo-Nazi Azov Battalion only in the context of defending Ukraine. So it's like, okay, now we're permitted to praise Nazis, but only in the context of them defending Ukraine against the Nazis that are saying that they're the actual Nazis. So I'm on some kind of next level mindfuck right here. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But wait, these are the actual Ukrainian soldiers. Here we have an old Jewish man with a long beard in Odessa fighting for Ukraine. But that doesn't make any sense. I thought he was a Nazi. And then we see Linus Linkovica saying Putin's denazification in the suburbs of Kiev, and you can see that the city of Kiev has been decimated, and these buildings are all collapsing. So it's like, wait, we shouldn't be blowing up cities if we're denazifying it. But wait a minute, didn't in the Battle of Berlin, didn't we completely level Berlin? So I guess it's okay to level cities, to denazify it sometimes, but not other times. If only, chat, there was someone who could cut through all this and make sense of it. Enter early 1900s German philosopher Carl Schmitt, who says, "The specific political distinction to which political actions and motives can be reduced is that between friend and enemy." Just keep that in mind. None of this matters. It's all bullshit. They're all fighting for your brain, but it's good guy, bad guy, friend, enemy, and that's it. In fact, I would actually suggest, I swore off video games for Lent, and I don't know why. I haven't done Lent in like 20 years, but I decided to do it because I've been playing too many video games. I've been playing CK3, and I said, I'm not going to play any more CK3. I'm going to read a book today. So I picked up the concept of the political on Wednesday, and I read it in one sitting. It's 60 pages. I would actually strongly suggest it in case you have any interest in political philosophy. And I found his points very persuasive. In particular, at the end, last paragraph, the point seems very obvious that there aren't really good and bad. You can make arguments if one side is good or better, but really each side is a friend and it has enemies, and that's all there is to it. But he explains to the liberal, because liberals will say that actually we're good. Fascism is bad. Fascism hurts people. Liberalism, no war. War is bad, and we use the economy to resolve issues and so on. He explains, if I'm allowed to read, for the application of such means, a new and essentially pacifist vocabulary has been created. War is condemned, but executions, sanctions, punitive expeditions, pacifications, protection of treaties, international pleas, and measures to assure peace remain. The adversary is thus no longer called an enemy, but a disturber of peace, and is thereby designated to be an outlaw of humanity. A war waged to protect or expand economic power must, with the aid of propaganda, turn into a crusade and into the last war of humanity. This is implicitly the polarity of ethics and economics, a polarity astonishingly systematic and consistent. But this allegedly non-political and apparently even anti-political system serves an existing or newly emerging friend and enemy grouping and cannot escape the logic of the political. That's the last paragraph of the entire book, and it talks, which was very prescient because this was written in like 1923. Before the Second War even happened. And Schmitt is interesting because he's like the only card-carrying NSDAP member who managed to survive the reputation of being a Nazi and still be taken seriously. Because this is true, what he's saying, is that we no longer have war enemies, we have disturbers of the peace. We're not, and even Putin says that we're not at war. We're simply having a special military operation to denazify our neighboring country. It's not a war. You misunderstand. So what do we level against the Russians? We say that we are going to sanction you. So let's take a look at this sanctioning that we're doing. First off, the ruble has dropped so much that the market cap of Bitcoin is now higher than the value of all the rubles. The market cap of the Russian ruble is now worth less than the Bitcoin. And every company from IKEA to fucking OnlyFans has decided to stop doing business in Belarus and Russia. Russian porn stars moaning, oh my god, after they're banned from OnlyFans during Ukraine invasion. And OnlyFans has shown such support for the Ukrainian sex workers, which they exploit ruthlessly for money, that they've changed their logo colors to yellow and blue. Isn't that wonderful? Google Pay, of course, because they've been kicked off SWIFT, which if you've listened to me rant about the banking system and all, you would know that SWIFT is the international exchange system that's based out of the U.S. SWIFT is so tightly controlled by the United States, for example, that when an art dealer in Switzerland sold art to a buyer, a collector in the Netherlands, the U.S. recognized that the art being sold was technically belongs to the Jews, because everything after World War II, a lot of art was allegedly stolen by Nazis, so you're not allowed to buy and sell that art because it belongs to Jews, collectively. So Swiss guy says, fuck that, I'm selling it to somebody in the Netherlands. The U.S. gets a word of that and says, no, you're not doing that, and they cancel the transaction on SWIFT because they own SWIFT. So two completely private parties in two different countries, neither of which are the U.S. U.S. gets to decide, no, you don't get to do that. Well, now the U.S. has gotten to decide that the entire country of Russia and everybody who's Russian does not get to participate in SWIFT, and Google and Apple have to obey that. So Google Pay and Apple Pay have completely banned Russia from using their services. And we see a line in Moscow, and from what I've actually been told, it's not uncommon to see lines this long in Moscow, but all these people are having issues paying for their tickets because they usually use Google Pay, and right now they're not allowed to. Here, see another type of sanction, which is sillier. Russian pet owners, cat breeders, are now prohibited from attending this year's cat shows, I guess. Usually they're dog shows. Not allowed to bring your Russian kitty cats to the cat shows because Putin bad. Likewise, if you are in Milan, you might have heard that the University of Milan considered banning teaching Fyodor Dostoevsky from their philosophy classes because he's Russian. And they were going to replace him with a different Ukrainian author instead. And they reversed this because it was so actually fucking insane that people made fun of them for it. But that was on the table. There's a musician who was in Germany, and I can't remember where in Germany, but his career is basically over because Munich. He was going to be in Munich in a showing, and the mayor of Munich asked him to publicly denounce Putin, and he refused. So his career is also being fucked with because there is now a purity test to do anything if you're Russian and you're overseas, which I'm sure is the objective is to make the people of Russia so unhappy that they do something about Putin. But if that actually happens, probably not. In fact, it's probably going to irritate people to be like, wait a second, why are we so thoroughly owned by the United States? Do we have to be? And there is a YouTuber who I watched today, NFKRS. I've never heard of him until recently. But he was kind of showing how these sanctions have impacted him, and one of the things that he said, which was interesting to me, is that as a YouTube creator, he is paid by AdSense and Patreon. And to get money from AdSense and Patreon, he has to use Swift. Well, he's banned from Swift right now, so he has money piling up in Patreon and AdSense that he cannot use because he can't collect it. So he's asked people, he's opened for the first time cryptocurrency wallets, which he's put in the description, so people who want to support him, but who have cryptocurrency instead can send them crypto, because he can't accept cash donations because he's been exiled from the banking system. The entire country of Russia has essentially been given the Kiwifarms treatment for Putin's actions. And then there is this clip which I'm going to play. It's subtitled in Russian, but I find it funny, and I'll sum it up after it's done playing.
Со мной в студии сегодня Александр Бутманов, экономист, основатель инвестиционного клуба «Союзники», эксперт по биржевым стратегиям. Александр, здравствуйте.
Приветствую, добрый день, не говорю.
Да, никто уже сейчас не говорит. Биржевые стратегии сегодня это вообще атовизм, или вы еще надеетесь в профессии остаться?
В крайнем случае я буду работать Дедом Морозом, как 25 лет назад.
Ну, это раз в год только. Ну,
да. Кроме шуток, давайте быстренько я это сделаю. Я передаю привет Сергею Усиченко, который пел 12 лет назад, 13, за смерть фондового рынка. Сегодня я пью газировку. Дорогой фондовый рынок, ты был нам близок, был интересен. Покойся с миром, дорогой товарищ.
Я не буду комментировать этот флешмоб, не хочу, потому что я в это верить.
The gist of that joke is that they're a business channel on Russian television, and Putin, to stop the stocks from tanking and from the value of the ruble debasing, has frozen the value of exchange for the Russian ruble at a certain amount, and has also closed the Russian stock exchange. So these are stock analysts on a business channel drinking to the death of their careers because they have now been replaced by a stock market which does not exist, and they are having some deadpan humor at their own expense, which is a very Russian way to celebrate something like that. Very interesting, right? So that's the summary of the sanctions and how they're currently affecting people in Russia. You may or may not care. You may think they're in the wrong. There is some very interesting language about this, which I'll get into in a second. My thoughts is that this can go one of two ways. I don't know which is more likely, but I think that either A, this works and Russia is collapsed, it's capitulated by the economic isolation that it's currently enjoying, with even Finland threatening to join NATO and Switzerland issuing its own sanctions on Russia. The U.S. is currently threatening to sanction countries that don't sanction Russia. So it's really trying to swing its dick as hard as it possibly can to punish this country for doing something that it does not like. And what it really is trying to do, as Carl Schmitt explains in his book, which again I would suggest is the concept of the political, is to remove the jus, or use, I don't know how to pronounce Latin. It's the jus belli. It's the right of war. Does a country have a right to wage war? Besides the United States, the United States can wage all the war at once, but it considers it a police action. Does a country have a right to go to war? And if the answer is no, then it's not a country. In the United States, states do not have the right to declare war. Only the government, the federal government, can declare war. So the states are not sovereign. They do not have the jus belli. They do not have the right to war. If the economic power that is the global homo, as it's called, the cathedral, if we can deprive a country of its ability to wage war, it ceases to be a country. And that is the end goal of our economic policy, is that everyone is under our umbrella. They are not able to commit war. If there needs to be a war, we have the UN police for that. We have our peacekeeping operations. It won't be a war. It will be a peacekeeping operation, and we'll take care of it for you. Don't worry. So if we can't dissuade Russia economically, then we've once again allowed jus belli to exist. There is a right to war, and that's very scary. People have enjoyed a peaceful Pax Americana, but that could be ending. And the other suspicion, the other way that this could swing, I believe, is that it doesn't work, and that Russia and China and India and all these other countries that fucking hate us, that have hated us for a long time and do not appreciate being disarmed countries with no jus belli, who are not independent under that definition, they will integrate economically, because Russia is not able to. Its supply chains are going to collapse, and the only option is for them to fill their quotas, their missing parts, with Chinese parts, and I think China wants that. So I don't know. I can't say for sure which way it will swing. There is speculation that China will invade Taiwan as this proceeds. But I mean, this is. I think it's finally happening. I think it's finally happening, where what I've been saying for a while, that countries don't appreciate the United States. They're done with it. They said, you guys are retards. You are a mutt nation. You can barely take care of yourselves. Even in Europe, the Germans and the French and the British, they all snub their nose at Americans and say, you guys don't even have health care. What the fuck do you think you can do protecting the entire world? It's like they hate us. And Russia doesn't appreciate us. China doesn't appreciate us. These countries don't want us to be the world police anymore. And I think that America will soon stick around and try to get everybody in the world to be on its side and to sanction Russia, and then Russia will just find ways to plug the holes, and its economy will find a way to stabilize. And that's the other option. It could just collapse. It could shatter. Putin could be ousted. But I don't know which one's more likely. But that's how I see it. That's the economy. That's my theory. And I think that's it. I think that's it for my political ramblings.